Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 390. 390 already. Wow. I'm your host, Paul Rykoff. It is Monday, December 8th. Whew. We're up for a big week. It is Manosphere Monday, and I am coming to you from New York City, USA. Our guest today is a returning champion, one of my favorite people to talk to, an insightful voice of reason and experience. The great Barbara Starr will be coming up in just a second to break down all things Hegseth, Pentagon, war crime allegations, and much more. She's coming up in just a minute. But first, as we hit this wild Monday, there is a ton happening. But before we get to the top news, I just want to reflect on something that I hope we can get to with Barbara as well. Yesterday, on that day in 1941, Imperial Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, killing over 2,500 Americans, wounding over 1,100, sinking and damaging 19 Navy ships, the date that will live in infamy, as FDR said. It gave the U.S. a reason to enter World War II, but I just want to reflect on it. It was the first time that survivors of Pearl Harbor were not able to be there. They are so old now that there's only a few of them left. But I was happy to see that there was reflection, there was remembrance. And on this show especially, we always want to honor all of the heroes of Pearl Harbor, honor the inspiration, all the folks who ran in, and especially honor the few that still remain. They are a light for us, especially in times like these. And we're going to need their example. We've got some breaking news, of course, happening across the spectrum. The latest news on the boat strikes continues to evolve. There's a he said, she said happening between the Democrats and Republicans who were in the briefing with Admiral Bradley about whether or not the survivors actually called for help, whether or not they were a fair game to be targeted. Of course, where was Hegseth during that time period? All that is still unfolding, and it's becoming increasingly partisan. In other news, President Donald Trump awarded himself basically the first ever FIFA Peace Prize. If you didn't see it on Friday because you had something better to do, there was kind of a spectacle involving Shaquille O'Neal, Tom Brady, and a slew of other people to announce the pools in the World Cup. And Trump was awarded a Peace Prize on the same day that the U.S. continued to strike boats off the coast of Venezuela, which I thought was extremely ridiculous. But of note, and maybe we'll get into this with Barbara, it was on Fox. So not surprising, Fox Sports. The power of the collective Fox media platform has never been stronger or more political, especially Fox Sports. It's an unparalleled, I think, propaganda machine for Trump, and the reach is tremendous. He's been really smart and shrewd, I think, focusing on how to expand his reach using sports, the NFL, UFC, the U.S. Open, and now the World Cup. And next weekend is coming up, the Army-Navy game. But I do think it's working. I talked about it on CNN with Aaron Burnett on Friday, and I think it's something we have to continue to watch. I think for many folks outside of America, this may be like when Hitler hosted the Berlin Olympics, but it will be front and center. And it begs the question at this World Cup, will someone push back? Will there be a Jesse Owens? Will someone make a statement in opposition of Trump? We will see. Watch that space. As of December 5th, there have been at least 22 strikes reported on at least 23 vessels, still not authorized by Congress, still not popular among the American people. The Senate Armed Services Committee will hold hearings this week about National Guard deployments to U.S. cities, which I think is long overdue. Tammy Duckworth and Roger Wicker, the Senate Armed Services Committee chairs, will be pushing for this, as the Defense Authorization Bill, the big funding bill for the Department of Defense, will be in the crosshairs of debate this week as well. As our friend Dan Lamothe noted in the new NDA agreement, Congress has called it the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Defense as it's codified by law. No War Department and Secretary of War there. It's about 3,000 pages. I don't know if Barbara's read it, but if anybody did, she probably did. We will have more coming up this week as we learn more about the alleged pipe bomber that struck the night before January 6th. It is day 1379 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Today, President Zelensky is meeting with European leaders after Trump said he didn't read the U.S. peace accord that was pushed forward on behalf of Russia. That debate continues. Trump is pushing a farm aid package this week, which will be reportedly $12 billion, and he'll get out on the trail and go to Pennsylvania. Australia is invoking a new law this week that bars children under 16 from having social media accounts. It takes effect this week. That'll be one to watch. And in culture, Frank Gehry, the titan of architecture, is dead at 96. He designed some of the world's most recognizable buildings. Also, a Canadian World War II veteran. I had the honor of meeting him a few times. A very kind and generous and brilliant man. In World Cup, we talked about sports, rather. The World Cup has now been announced. The U.S. will be in Group D with Paraguay, Australia, and a qualifier that is yet to be determined. College football was wild. Indiana did it. They took out Ohio State 13-10. So congratulations to gritty Indiana with their Heisman QB and a little bit of luck. College football was amazing. We were on the money with our picks. Georgia beat Alabama. Texas Tech beat BYU. And James Madison and Tulane are getting in the playoffs. It's really amazing, and the playoffs haven't even started yet. But it is Monday, and it is a wild time at the intersection of national security and politics, especially. It still is Manosphere Monday, and Army-Navy Week is this weekend in Baltimore, but it especially now is a time to stay vigilant. Helping us stay vigilant, one of our favorite friends and guests, a thoughtful voice of reason, and a person who I just think knows a lot of shit. She's very, very important and thoughtful. The great and powerful Barbara Starr is back on Independent Americans. Welcome back, Barbara.
Before you ask me, no, I haven't read the 100 plus pages of the NDAA, but delighted to be here, as always.
And for folks watching on YouTube, this wasn't coordinated, but you have red on, I have green on. It is the festive holiday season. You spent many years covering the Pentagon and our troops. You are one of the most, I think, respected reporters in that space. But before we get to that, it is the holiday season. Where are you, Barbara, and how are you?
I'm good. It's getting to be winter out there, mighty cold outside, but that's okay. You just, pile on the coats and the hats and the gloves and the scarves and the boots and go forth.
What was it like covering the Pentagon around Christmas time? Did it feel like a Christmas in the Pentagon and the holidays, or did it feel like not the holidays because everybody was working when folks were celebrating?
I think it varied from year to year depending on what was going on. I have traditionally seen that through the holiday period, they try and give people time off. So in fact, the hallways get just a little bit more deserted, a little more quiet. But, it's the Pentagon. So it can go, if it has to, from 0 to 60 faster than the fastest sports car out there. This is a place that has a lot of resiliency built in over the years. I think the real question is, when I say that, is that resiliency still there if, heaven forbid, there is a national security crisis? Pete Hegseth is leading such an insular existence at the Pentagon, him and his team of people, and that seems to be about it. So is the Pentagon always prepared when there's a crisis? Yes. Are they as prepared as they should be? Maybe we don't quite know the answer to that.
Let's dig into that, because I want to make that our top topic. There's so many components of this, Barbara. There's the new propaganda press corps, as I've been calling it. There is the Venezuelan debate about whether strikes will happen. There are the Caribbean strikes. There is Signalgate. There is just all this controversy and drama happening where I think our national security threats continue to rise. Some of them are our own creation. But I think we asked you this in some way last time. But let me start with this, Barbara. Have you ever seen it this chaotic? It feels unstable, but it definitely is chaotic. Have you ever in all your years seen the Pentagon look and feel this chaos?
No is the answer, because every Secretary of Defense and Chairman of Joint Chiefs that I've ever covered is all about no drama. There's a reason there's very precise processes for moving through a military operation stage by stage. Endless meetings, traveling around, talking to friends and allies and other countries, building coalitions, coordinating operations. These are the ways you establish a strategy, implement a strategy, have the ways and means to do it, and the way you avoid drama. And Pete Hegseth has been, there's just no way around it. He has been Mr. Drama day after day after day. And the question that's going to rise, if it hasn't already, is how much President Trump wants to deal with that. He is a very dramatic person himself in his own right as president. There's no question about that. But does he want to keep dealing with all of this from the Pentagon all the time?
Do you have any insight, any sourcing, any reporting or gut tell you, how long will he tolerate, Mr. or Secretary drama?
My sense of it is until the senior Republicans on Capitol Hill, which in the last week or so have just begun to really conduct oversight and ask critical questions of the Pentagon, until they really get more involved, although they've put a toe in the water, and make it clear to the White House that this is not the way they want to see business done, I think things will drag along. And maybe that's the worst case scenario. Do you want things dragging along with all of this constant stress if in fact there's going to be a crisis? If you're going to send troops into Venezuela, it has to be done with a lot more precision than at least what we're seeing right now.
Can I ask you, Barbara, to objectively analyze what's the worst part of this, right? Because there's allegations of war crimes. There's the passing of the buck of leadership. Then there's Signalgate, where I think at least it's clear that Hegseth used his personal cell phone, and the IG said he could have compromised the safety of folks in uniform. There is his adversarial relationship with everyone, but especially the press. There is the new defense strategy, which sounds like a wish list straight out of Putin's Christmas tree. What's the worst thing in your view? What's the biggest threat to our national security? And is that the same thing that you think would ultimately potentially bring him down? Is it one thing that would rub the Republican senators most of all and could result in him actually going down?
Well, you and I both know, of course, the ultimate crisis is U.S. troops in combat and you hate to say it, but being killed, not surviving, a combat operation gone wrong. This is something that is always or should be on the mind of every Pentagon and military leader all the time, even on a quiet day, because we both know everything, it's that old saying, oh, everything's going fine until heaven forbid it's not. And something goes terribly wrong, and it happens. But underlying all of that, I think there is a growing question about the dismantlement of traditional, and there's value to them, guardrails at the Pentagon, dismantling the JAG military lawyer system, dismantling diversity. Why is that such a terrible thing? The other things that Hegseth is focusing on that seem to be more of a video opportunity for him. Everybody wants troops to be fit. Everybody wants them to exercise and, have the warrior mentality. I'm not aware that they did not have that prior to Mr. Hegseth coming into office. But if you're going to focus on being the video Secretary of Defense with every opportunity to put your face on camera, wave your arms around, make speeches with the same message points that you made since you walked in the door, I think, one, that is a risk because you're not prepared. Are you sitting in every meeting you should be sitting in, learning everything you should be? And the risk is to troops on a tactical level, day to day, but there is also a fundamental risk to what the U.S. military is about in this country. And Hegseth says it's about breaking things and killing people. I would say that is an immature point of view about what the U.S. military is all about. And he's dismantling the guardrails that make the military what it is.
You are very diplomatic. I think, but you make an important point that I have been making, but I think needs to be made more loudly. Is the implication we weren't lethal before? We weren't focused on killing bad guys for 20 years, including the time when he was in and serving in Iraq and other places. I mean, it's a real disrespectful slight to basically an entire generation that was evolved as warfighters. Let's use their word. But also not looking to kill any more people than they had to, right? And abiding by the rules and evolving to be arguably the most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen. But let me ask you I want to focus on one thing with you that is so stark to me. So last week we had this first ever propaganda press corps event. You have the My Pillow guys TV network and almost like a total switch between where you used to sit and ask questions of the Secretary of Defense, right? You were there as the Pentagon correspondent for CNN for decades, is now Laura Loomer. a radical conspiracy theorist, a bomb-throwing social media personality. It's almost like a one-for-one switch. They got rid of Dan Lamothe, they put in Matt Gaetz. They got rid of, you're not there anymore, and Laura Loomer is. Can you talk about just your reaction? It wasn't necessarily your exact seat, although they may claim that. What's your reaction to, let's use Laura Loomer as the most radical example of someone who now sits in the room that you used to sit in?
To say, I've come to the conclusion that I'm a First Amendment freedom of the press absolutist. You either believe in it or you don't. So if you are a journalist and you are reporting, whatever your political persuasion is, I say go for it. If you can break news stories that are fair, balanced, accurate, and not just some yelling, I'm trying to say politely here, Paul, mishmash of items, go for it. I have no problem with that. I have a problem with Mr. Hegseth deciding that these are the only people he wants to talk to. He only wants to talk to people where he feels safe. And this comes back to, I believe, what is the fundamental problem with Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. I don't know how you can come to the conclusion other than this is someone who is afraid. He's perhaps afraid because he's smart enough to know he doesn't know everything he probably should know about being Secretary of Defense, but neither did anybody else when they came into the job. You pay attention, you learn, you devote your brain power to absorbing all the, he's sitting in a place where dozens and dozens and dozens of people would be very pleased to walk into his office and give him detailed briefings on any subject he would ask for. And he seems very fearful. And I think he's very fearful of the mainstream media. So that's his problem. Now, the mainstream media has gone along and, as we have said, is breaking scoop after scoop. They do not have the same access. That's a problem. So these folks that do now have access, I guess the question is, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to turn themselves into being journalists? And that's not a bad word. A lot of them say that they are. Are they going to continue to look for facts to report? A lot of them say they are. And this is something the cliche time will tell, because if they don't succeed at that, they're going to become very irrelevant and no one's going to pay attention. They have a lot of readership, they have a lot of viewers, and good for them. It's a new media world out there. I think we all have to adapt. But truth and facts continue to be the North Star.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not holding my breath, but maybe there'll be an unlikely, I don't want to say hero, but leader who will arise. I mean, Matt Gaetz actually asked a bunch of hard questions of, I think it's the chief of staff. He asked him a bunch of hard questions that were on tape, and maybe it's somebody like Matt Gaetz who needs
And did you notice he didn't get answers? He got asked some very reasonable questions, and he got no answers, because this is what underlies Pete Hegseth and any answer to any question, the Trump-approved, White House-approved message point. And I come back to the proposition, several days a week, he can get away with it. He's not going to be able to get away with it the day it all goes wrong, which nobody wants to see.
Yeah, and we may find out if there is hearings. I hope they can get hearings in the 7 or so days they have left in session before Christmas. Unfortunately, it may more likely be next year, which who knows where we'll be by then. Let me ask you, Barbara, there are two things that also happened this week that maybe you can give folks what you think they need to know. Trump revealed his new defense strategy, which is abandons our Ukrainian allies, kind of gives a middle finger to Europe, and sounds like a Christmas present to Putin, and they will try to get a defense budget passed before the end of the year. What do you think folks who aren't deep in this need to know about those two things that are normally very, very important and generally kind of unsurprising, but this feels different?
The walk back from NATO is a Trump priority, and I think it's very dangerous because Vladimir Putin looks at this. The guy has to be sitting there laughing in Moscow, and he should be. If he reads all these details, I can't imagine him sitting there reading the National Defense Strategy. That's a picture I'd like to see, because this is all a gift to Putin. If you're going to walk away from NATO, what on earth? And you know what? I go back to the Pearl Harbor survivors, World War II. This is a generation that fought with no spectacle to use your words, and fought for years on end. Really, you can make a very strong case that that's the generation that in Asia and Europe saved the world. And walking away from NATO gets you nothing except risk.
You read my mind. I want to go below the radar quickly for a topic that I do think is important. In moments like this, we look for maybe the anti-example of Hegseth. And I look at the survivors from Pearl Harbor, the folks who ran in when so many others were running out. Pearl Harbor is one of those things I think becomes more important the further away it is, especially for the younger generation that maybe can't fathom that level of heroism or that level of fear. That generation also served in Congress, right? Served as secretaries of defense, served in senior leadership at the Pentagon. What do you think is the most important lesson for us to think about in 2025 about what happened on Pearl Harbor?
That it should never happen again, and that the most important thing in this entire discussion remains the troops, and to have troops who are apolitical, devoted to defending the nation, devoted to defending the Constitution, not looking to be in video games, not looking to stand there wearing red hats and applauding a political agenda. That to me is a path to disaster. That the troops who serve today, they will never step foot, hopefully, in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, but they're going to be out there and they need to be trained, equipped, but also have a completely realistic view of what combat is all about. And I suppose, Paul, let me turn it back to you. A young troop going into combat for the first time, do they understand what they're facing? How much does it come to as a shock to a young troop stepping off the plane into the sand?
Yeah, there's no way you can possibly understand it until you go through it. I say this a lot. I think the same is true of only a few other things. Dying, right? Parenthood, I think, combat, and I now think maybe a pandemic, just the magnitude of it, right? It's hard to understand and explain it unless you've been through it. But there's one thing that I keep thinking about from Pearl Harbor this week, Barbara, that I hope folks will remember. It was a surprise. And there was a failure of imagination on the part of the Americans to anticipate that kind of attack. And we saw the same thing on 9/11. We saw the same thing on January 6th. And I think in this moment, we have to be more creative in anticipating what our enemies might do. Because, the defense strategy also, I think, fails to focus on China, which now is in a position to potentially roll a lot more quickly than ever before. And in all this conversation, folks aren't anticipating what could happen in China with Taiwan and any other number of attacks, multiple drone attacks on U.S. soil at the same time. We don't know what the next surprise attack is going to look like, but we should anticipate that we might be surprised. And we need to be more creative because, the old saying is the military is always fighting the last war instead of the next war. I think that is dangerously true right now for many, and especially for the population, for this country. They couldn't have imagined 9/11 until it happened, and we can't imagine what's going to happen next, but we got to try, right?
I think that's absolutely right. And that's why, hopefully, as a Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth is finding a way to be interested to look at that question in depth.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears here. It is Monday. It's going to be a busy week ahead. I thank you for joining us. I know you've been making the rounds, but I want to finish with something good.
Something good, oh, something sweet. Feel the fire, feel the
And I can't wait to hear what Barbara's going to come up with. But I'm going to give you guys something to start Monday that is probably a bit unexpected. We did kind of touch on Manosphere Monday. I want to mention that I think Barbara was kind of deep in the manosphere that is the Pentagon for decades. And when we explore the Pentagon and the Hegseth culture, it is also about exploring what it means to be macho and really strong. I think that's more diverse now and involves women, obviously, but this is touching on manosphere. Let's go back to a different kind of manosphere. My something good is the NSYNC holiday album. Yes, the boy band album from 1998, Justin Timberlake, J.C. Chavez, Chris Kirkpatrick, Joey Fatone, Lance Bass. I just love this album, and I think it's fantastic. And even if you hate boy bands, I think it's something good, and it'll kind of have you moving. It's got Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, it's Christmas, Oh Holy Night, but it's NSYNC, it's happy, it's positive. It's a simpler time in America in the late 1990s. and to start your week off, hit it in your playing platform. NSYNC's holiday album. I think it's something good. Barbara, over to you, my friend. What have you got on this Monday to start us off with something good?
I'm going to cheat and I'm going to go back a couple of months. And I think I've talked about it before, but I'll always talk about it. The Dodgers winning the World Series. You're talking about Manosphere and Macho and all this kind of business. All you need is the Dodgers, the boys of summer out there on the field, and they'll be back out on the field in a few months. Spring training's coming. There we go. That's it. Something good. I'm looking forward already to spring training.
Glad you didn't forget, because I said they were so good they almost had me rooting for them. They did have me rooting for them, especially Ohtani and Yamamoto, because the way they carried themselves. What about the Chargers are pretty good too, and the Rams. I mean, you got a time now where LA professional football is back. That's got to be exciting too, right?
No, that's football. You have to know that I went to school in the LA City School, Unified School District, junior high and high school, years of girls playing touch football. No.
Well, that's something to watch too. There will be the Olympics in LA in 2028. Flag football will be an Olympic sport. I think it's men and women.
And the women are going to rock.
They are.
Also,
I will piggyback on that. If you haven't watched women's flag football, it's a high school sport now in many states. It's fast growing. It's on ESPN and other places, but these women are balling out.
I give them tons of credit. I just didn't want to do it.
Well, I know you're excited for the Dodgers. We'll see you at spring training. In the meantime, Barbara, thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do. You really are a voice of clarity and reason. I hope folks will follow you on social media. I do feel like, even more so now than ever before, you don't pull any punches. You're also on other programs like BBC. So, Barbara, please keep up the important, vigilant work. Thank you for all you do for the country. And you're a tremendous public servant. You're such an inspiration and a role model for so many folks in journalism. Thank you for continuing to lead the way.
Thank you for having me.
That's Barbara Starr. Follow her everywhere. We are daily now. This is what we're going to do. We're going to bring great guests in. We got a big lineup coming up this week, a lot of surprises, but we're going to stay focused, obviously, on this news. We will do Football Friday. Follow Independent Americans everywhere on all social media. Subscribe on YouTube now. Get the merch. You can get some IA merch to take you into the holidays and wear down to spring training. Join our Patreon community. If you chip in a couple bucks, if you like this show enough, give us $5 and help us keep it going. I will be on TV again this week on CNN, on MSN, and others, and we're going to keep bringing the fire. You know that the country might be divided, but we want to add light to contrast the heat. Country over party, people over politics, light over heat. Our movement's growing, and we are bringing hope. The hope that this democracy needs so badly right now. If you enjoyed this episode with Barbara, share it far and wide, hit that subscribe button, and invite others to declare their independence. And stay vigilant, my friends, because eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And no, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant, and we're all in this together. Barbara is a great example of what vigilance looks like and how important it is. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Thank you for tuning in to Independent Americans. Happy Monday. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay vigilant, America. Stay vigilant.
Powered by Righteous Media.